You are already being read right now. Every habit you have, every reaction you repeat, every time you open your mouth before you should, someone is cataloging it. You think you're playing the game. You're the game being played. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Most people are not mysterious. They are not complex. They are not unpredictable forces of nature moving through the world with strategic intent. They are patterns. Mechanical, repetitive, embarrassingly readable patterns. You get angry at the same triggers. You cave under the same pressure. Perform confidence in the same moments and collapse in the same ones. You telegraph your moves before you even decide to make them. And the people around you, your colleagues, your rivals, the ones who smile at your face, they have already mapped you. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this in the 1500s. Writing for Medici princes surrounded by assassins and conspirators, he observed something that hasn't changed in 500 years. Men are governed by their habits far more than by their reason. The person who can read your habits controls your decisions, not through force, not through authority, but through prediction. And once someone can predict you, they don't need to fight you. They just need to wait. Here is the brutal truth this video is built on. Being predictable is not a personality trait. It is not charm. It is not authenticity. It is a strategic error, a tactical hole, an open wound in your defenses that anyone paying attention can walk straight through. What you are going to learn today is not how to be mysterious for the sake of ego. You are going to learn how to weaponize unpredictability, how to read others while remaining unreadable, how to influence decisions, every decision, without ever revealing your hand. This is Machiavellian psychology applied to your real life. And after this video, you will never look at your own behavior the same way again. Here is what we are covering today. Principle 1. Why your predictability is their leverage and how it's being used against you right now. Principle 2. The fox and the lion. Machiavelli's two-animal model for reading the room and switching modes. Principle 3. Information asymmetry. Why what you don't reveal is your most dangerous weapon. Principle 4. Pattern interruption. How to shatter their mental model of you in one calculated move. Principle 5. Manufactured consent. How to engineer the decisions people think they're making freely. Principle 6. Strategic mirroring. How to feed people a version of you that serves your agenda. Principle 7. The long game. How Machiavellian predictability exploitation plays out over months, not minutes. Stay until the end, because the final principle is the one most people never reach. And it is the difference between someone who understands power and someone who actually has it. When you walk into a difficult conversation, does the other person already know how it ends? Do they know you'll get frustrated at minute 3? Do they know you'll give ground when they go silent? Do they know exactly which phrase makes you defensive? Which compliment makes you cooperative? Which threat makes you fold? If the answer is yes, you are not a person to them. You are a formula. This is what Machiavelli called the conquered man. Not someone beaten by force. Someone beaten because they could be predicted. Think about what prediction gives someone over you. It gives them timing. They know when to push. They know when to wait. They know when your defenses are down and when you're performing strength you don't actually have. It gives them leverage, because if they know you'll eventually give ground, they never have to offer a fair trade. They just have to apply the right pressure at the right moment and wait for the formula to run. It gives them the initiative. You believe you're reacting to events. You are actually responding to a script they wrote for you months ago. Here is the wolf and the sheep dynamic, stripped bare. The wolf does not attack every time it is hungry. It watches. It maps the flock. It identifies which sheep always grazes at the edge, which one panics first, which one separates from the group when startled. The wolf does not have more intelligence than the sheep. It has more information, and it uses that information to make the outcome inevitable before the attack even begins. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, but above all, it is best to be neither fully understood nor fully predictable." People always forget that second half. Fear alone is unstable, but mystery, genuine strategic opacity is unassailable. Here is your tactical directive for Principle 1. For the next 7 days, do not explain yourself. When someone asks why you made a decision, give them the outcome, not the reasoning. When you feel the urge to justify your position preemptively, stop. That urge is a predictability signal. It means you're about to telegraph. Start noticing the moments when you perform your personality rather than express it. The performed laugh, the explained silence, the over-volunteered excuse. Every one of those moments is a data point you're handing to someone else. Stop donating intelligence about yourself. In the next section, we go deeper, because reading them is the other half of this equation, and Machiavelli had a two-animal model for this that is ruthlessly practical. Machiavelli wrote a line in The Prince that has misread ever since. The prince must be a lion to frighten wolves and a fox to recognize traps. Most people read this as two types of people, the strong and the clever. That is wrong. Machiavelli was describing two modes that the same person must be able to inhabit, and critically, must be able to switch between without warning. The lion is direct. The lion confronts. The lion uses force, social, professional, psychological, when the situation calls for dominance and clarity. The lion moves in straight lines. The fox is lateral. The fox watches. The fox allows the other player to commit to a position before revealing its own. The fox does not argue. It redirects. It uses the opponent's certainty against them. The trap that most people fall into is this: they become one animal permanently. The permanent lion becomes predictable in his aggression. People stop fearing him because they know exactly when he'll charge. They set traps for lions. They build cages for lions. The permanent fox becomes predictable in his evasion. People stop trusting him. They rout around him. They stop bringing him into rooms where real decisions are made. The Machiavellian player switches, and the switch itself is the weapon. Ask yourself this: when do the people in your life expect you to go quiet? When do they expect you to push back? When do they expect you to concede now? Reverse it. Once. Not randomly, not reactively, deliberately. Go quiet when they expect the argument. Argue when they expect your silence. Concede the small thing they expected you to fight for, and hold the large thing they assumed you'd give up. Watch what happens to their model of you. It breaks, and when someone's model of you breaks, they have to start over. They lose the initiative. You gain it. How many times in the last month have you done exactly what someone predicted you would do? Not because it was the right move, but because it was your move, your default behavior, your script. How many rooms have you walked into already decided? The tactician walks in undecided, not because he lacks conviction, but because he will not commit his position until he has read the room. Tactical directive for Principle 2. Before your next high-stakes conversation, identify which animal the other person is expecting. Then consciously inhabit the other one. If they're expecting the lion, enter as the fox. Ask questions. Let them talk. Let them reveal their architecture. If they're expecting the fox, walk in as the lion. Be direct. Make a demand. Watch how they scramble to recalibrate. The goal is not to be unpredictable for its own sake. The goal is to deny them a fixed target. You cannot aim at what you cannot predict. Coming up next, the single most underused asset you own. And you're probably giving it away for free right now. There is a covert contract operating in almost every social relationship you have. You share information. They share information. Everyone stays on roughly equal ground. Nobody gets too far ahead. Nobody falls too far behind. It feels like trust. It feels like connection. it is also a cage, because in that arrangement, your fears are visible, your ambitions are legible, your weaknesses are mapped. And the moment someone maps your weaknesses, your relationship with them is no longer equal. They hold asymmetric information. They know more about you than you know about them. And in any negotiation, any competition, any long-term power dynamic, the person with more information wins. Sun Tzu put it simply, know your enemy and know yourself. And in 100 battles, you will never be in peril. The inverse is also true. Let your enemy know you, and you are already in peril before the battle begins. Here is what information asymmetry looks like in everyday life. Your colleague knows you need the promotion more than you're letting on, because you've mentioned your mortgage twice in passing and complained about your performance review once. Now they know your flaw. They know how low you'll go to secure the outcome you need. Your rival knows you're insecure about your public speaking because you always preface it with a self-deprecating joke. That joke is not charm. It is a flag you plant in the ground that says, "This is where I'm soft." Your negotiating partner knows you've already mentally accepted this deal because your energy shifted when they mentioned the timeline you need. You didn't say any of these things directly. You performed them through cognitive dissonance leaking out around the edges. The Machiavellian principle here is stark. Silence is not neutral. Silence is accumulation. Every time you don't explain your reasoning, you accumulate strategic opacity. Every time you don't justify your decision, you accumulate authority. Every time you let a silence stretch past comfortable, you accumulate information about the other person, because they will fill it. People fill silences. They cannot help it. And what they fill them with is always more honest than what they plan to say. Tactical directive for Principle 3. Create 3 information categories in your life. Public, protected. Public is what you actively share, curated, strategic, useful for your positioning. Protected is what you share only in exchange, and only when the trade benefits you. Private is what you never share, not because you're ashamed, but because it's yours, because it's leverage, and the moment it's theirs, it stops being leverage. Audit your last week of conversations. How much did you volunteer, unprompted? How much of your private category accidentally became public? Tighten the boundary. Now, Principle 4 is where this gets tactical, in a way most people have never considered. It involves breaking a specific psychological mechanism, and once you understand how to break it, you can use it to rewrite how people process you entirely. The human brain is a prediction machine. It does not experience reality directly. It builds a model of reality, assembled from past observations, and then it filters everything through that model. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. The brain runs on pattern recognition because pattern recognition is efficient. It allows quick decisions without full analysis, which means the people around you are not seeing you. They are seeing their model of you, built from everything you've consistently done before. And that model is running on autopilot. Here is why this matters strategically. If you can identify what their model of you predicts, you can break it deliberately. And when that model breaks, something important happens inside them. Cognitive dissonance fires. The brain doesn't like broken models. It has to spend resources rebuilding. In that moment of rebuild, they are off balance, reactive, recalibrating. That is your window. Machiavelli described this in the context of political power. It is the nature of men to be bound by the benefits they confer as much as by those they receive. But the inverse holds. When the pattern breaks, the binding breaks. New terms become possible. The hyena expects the lion to roar before it moves. That's the pattern. That's the model. The lion that moves in silence, before the roar, without the roar, catches the hyena completely. Not because it was stronger, but because it was different than expected. Count to 3. Watch what happens. Think of someone who has a fixed model of you. someone who knows how you'll react, someone who has been taking your predictability for granted. Now think of one behavior, just one, that would break that model completely. Not dramatic, not performative, surgical. The person who expects you to argue, you agree, fully once, without any caveats. The person who expects you to chase, you withdraw, completely once, without explanation. The person who expects you to need their approval, you operate without seeking it, once, and never mention it. Tactical directive for Principle 4. Identify your 3 most predictable behaviors in your most important relationships. Write them down, literally name them. Then identify the opposite behavior for each one. You are not going to flip all 3. You are going to flip one strategically in a moment of your choosing. Not as retaliation but as recalibration. Your goal is not chaos. Your goal is to disrupt their model enough that they have to start paying attention again. Because attention is the beginning of respect, and respect is the foundation of everything that comes next. Which brings us to the most dangerous principle in this entire video. Because this one is not defensive, this one is offensive. Stay with me. Here is something uncomfortable. The decisions people make around you, most of them are not free. They are shaped by the environment you create, by the information you provide or withhold, by the framing you offer or deny, by the timing you control. This is not manipulation in the way the word usually gets used. Manipulation implies deception. What we're describing is something more precise: strategic influence over the conditions of decision-making. Machiavelli was explicit about this. Men judge by the eye more than by the hand. For everyone can see, but very few can touch. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few actually know what you are. What people see drives their decisions, not what is true, not what is real, what they perceive, and you control far more of their perception than you currently choose to. Here is what manufactured consent looks like in practice. You set the agenda for a conversation by asking the first question, not by making the first statement. The question frames the terrain. The other person answers within your frame without realizing they've entered it. You present 3 options when you only want one outcome, but you make the 2 decoys slightly undesirable in ways the person can identify themselves. They choose your preferred option. They believe they chose it freely. They have more commitment to it because it was their decision. You time your request for the end of a meeting, when decisions have already been flowing freely, when resistance has lowered, when cognitive fatigue makes it harder to generate objections. None of this is deception. All of this is architecture. When was the last time someone did this to you? And how many times did you not notice? The Machiavellian insight here is that influence is not about force. Force creates resistance. Resistance creates unpredictable outcomes. Influence is about gravity. Create the conditions where the outcome you need becomes the path of least resistance for the other person, and they will walk it themselves, willingly, enthusiastically. Tactical directive for Principle 5. Before your next important conversation, work backwards. Identify the decision you need the other person to reach. Then identify the conditions, information, and framing that make that decision feel natural to them. Set those conditions before the conversation begins. You are not trapping them. You are designing the terrain. And the person who designs the terrain always has the advantage. You have multiple versions of yourself. You already know this. You behave differently with your boss than with your oldest friend, differently with someone you're trying to impress than with someone you already have in your corner, differently when you want something than when you don't. This is not hypocrisy. This is human nature, and Machiavelli understood it with clinical precision. The error most people make is that their versions of themselves are reactive. They adjust to others involuntarily, mirroring mood, matching energy, accommodating tone, without any strategic intention behind the adjustment. The Machiavellian player makes this process conscious, deliberate, calibrated. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Stop waiting for the situation to shape you. Shape the version of yourself you present to the situation. What does strategic mirroring actually mean? It means identifying what the other person responds to and giving them precisely enough of it to create rapport, while never fully becoming it. The fox does not become the prey. The fox resembles the prey just long enough to close the distance. You mirror the energy of a high-strung executive to signal competence and pace. You slow down and soften with someone who values warmth and needs to feel heard. You match the directness of a person who values efficiency, and you expand into nuance with someone who needs to feel that the complexity has been respected. This is not manipulation, this is precision. The unprepared man enters every room as himself, broadcasting his full personality, his biases, his default energy, and then wonders why some rooms don't respond to him. The Machiavellian enters every room as the version of himself that this room needs, without abandoning his core, without losing his agenda. Tactical directive for Principle 6. Before every significant interaction this week, identify one thing. What does this person need to feel in order to trust me? Not like you. Trust you. Liking is social. Trust is strategic. Trust means they lower their guard. Trust means they share information. Trust means they take your framing seriously. Give them what they need to feel trusted. Intentionally, precisely, and you will have access that the unstrategic person never will. Everything we've covered so far works in individual moments, in specific conversations, in targeted interactions. But here is the thing about Machiavellian strategy that most people miss completely because they are thinking in days. Machiavelli was thinking in years. The prince who eliminates an enemy in the first month of his reign does not celebrate. He calculates, because every action he takes in year 1 sets the terms for year 2, year 3, year 10. This is shadow integration applied to strategy. The version of yourself you are building right now, through every interaction, every negotiation, every controlled self-presentation, is the version of yourself that will have compounding strategic returns in 18 months. Injuries must be done all at once, so that being tasted less, they offend less. Benefits should be given little by little, so that the flavor of them may last longer. The fox understands delayed reward. The impulsive lion does not. Here is what the long game looks like in practice. You are not trying to win this meeting. You are building a reputation for being the person who shows up with more information than expected. You are not trying to outmaneuver this colleague today. You are establishing over months that you are the person in the room who is never fully readable, which means you are always slightly unpredictable, which means you are always slightly respected in a way that is very hard for them to articulate. You are not trying to close this deal. You are building the architecture of a relationship where the other party needs you slightly more than you need them. And that ratio compounds. Are you playing the game in front of you, or are you playing the game 3 moves ahead? Most people are playing checkers, reactive. One move, one response. The Machiavellian plays chess with 18 month timerons. Tactic directive for Principle 7. Identify one relationship in your life that matters strategically, not emotionally, professionally, competitively, or both. Map where you want to be with that person in 12 months. What you want them to think of you. What you want them to need from you. What you want them to offer you without being asked. Then work backwards. What does that person need to observe consistently over the next 6 months in order for that outcome to feel natural to them? Start building that sequence now, not tomorrow. Not after you feel ready. Now, let's bring this together, because there is a through line here that is more important than any individual principle. Every strategy we've covered, pattern interruption, information asymmetry, the fox-lion switch, manufactured consent, strategic mirroring, the long game, They all rest on a single foundation. The person who is predictable surrenders the initiative, and the person who surrenders the initiative surrenders everything that follows. This is not a motivational framework. This is not self-help. This is a description of how power actually operates in boardrooms, in relationships, in political systems, in every sustained human competition throughout history. Machiavelli did not invent these dynamics. He named them. He systematized them. He was honest about them in an age when honesty about power was considered dangerous. That honesty is still dangerous, which is exactly why most people avoid it. Here is what happens if you do nothing with what you've learned today. You go back into the same patterns, the same telegraphed responses, the same performed predictability, and the people who have already mapped you will continue to operate with the advantage, not because they're smarter than you, but because they're less readable than you. That gap closes the moment you decide to close it. The prescription is not complex. It is simply this: become the observer before you become the actor. Read the room before you enter it. Withhold before you volunteer. Interrupt your own patterns before someone else exploits them. Move like the fox. Strike like the lion. Plan like neither animal. Plan like the strategist watching both from above. You came to this video because something in the hook was true about you. You recognized the pattern. You felt the discomfort of being readable. That recognition is not weakness. That recognition is the beginning of sovereignty. If this changed the way you see your own behavior, subscribe, because this channel does not deal in comfort. It deals in clarity, and there is a great deal more clarity ahead. More importantly, share this with someone who is still playing the game unaware, because the greatest gift you can give someone you respect is the truth about how the game is actually played. And before you leave, drop Sovereign IGN in the comments below, not as a performance, as a declaration that you saw the pattern, that you understood the game, that you are done being the formula someone else is running. Write it, mean it, and come back next week, because the next video goes somewhere most channels will never touch.